Good morning, beautiful being. It is good to be inside here with you out of the rain. It is very definitely raining out there, and I, as you may be able to tell, depending on when you see this, am running late. Anyway, fortunately, there's such a thing as glide time in my life, so here I am, and because I feel dishevelled today, we're having rocks that are all smooth and beautiful. Smooth, beautiful, and sparkly, and something that we can enjoy under the artificial light if I can just find a way to not have the camera overexpose it completely. I'm still getting used to my new phone and its new camera, and it's quite different. So here you go. This is Chinese quartz. It's not from Brazil, where a lot of people expect quartz to come from. Oh, that's a bit better. And it's just quite lovely. Good morning, beautifuls. It's lovely to see you. Really appreciate sharing my space with you today. There we go. Now you can see the inside and the outside of it. Linda, it's wonderful to see you on the bridge. It's always a privilege when you're able to join me live. It's a privilege whenever anybody can join me live. I don't always know your little faces. I can't always remember who you are, but it's lovely that you're here. So, thank you for joining me. Just enjoying this wonderful quartz pyramid. Do not forget to show you the bottom. Look at that. It's like a star. You can see right through it. Just getting the exposure right. This camera's exposure, its light meter, is a lot smarter than my old one, but that creates its own problems if there's too much light reflected. So, now this is the other thing, and I haven't shown this off for a little while, but I'm very fond of it. This is a quartz point, right? And it would have been one of those rough and ugly ones that looks like nothing, which is why it was polished. And it must have grown like this because there's all these layers in it, but maybe not because the layers bend. So let's just say that it was a point that grew and there were layers and layers of stuff that grew on it. And this is not a coffin. This is, you can see, this is a point that grew into it. And it's got this very shiny, optical, reflective part, which I really enjoy. And then it's got this misty bit, which is completely different. And I just love every facet of this rock. And because it's been polished, it's all very smooth and beautiful. This is probably the prettiest sort of poster child face. But there really isn't, even this is the so-called bottom, but look at that. You can see the layers that it's grown. There's the hexagonal shape. So it's it would have been like this, but it's shattered. And this is the inside, which is very pure and white and reflective. And there's just nothing missing. There you are. You can see this is that's the shape of it. It's grown. So I really enjoy this one, and that's what I'm glad I can share it with you. I can never remember without looking for a while if there's rainbows in this one. I think there are, but you got to know where to find them. Good morning, Jen. It's lovely to see you here on a wet Wellington rainy morning. It's good to be inside and sharing with you. So today, and it's so appropriate really, I feel dishevelled because I have spent a good portion of the night not letting my body be my mind, and that carried on this morning. Why doesn't matter, that's just what I've been doing. And in fact, in increasing measures, I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, especially because I'm breaking some very, very old habits of being about, who I am and how my life is and how it feels to be me. And when I was deciding what to talk about today, that's what I decided to talk about. The fact that, your body is actually your subconscious and your unconscious mind, right? Your body is your unconscious mind. Your body is this habituated thing that does a lot of stuff for you, like walking and swallowing and breathing and seeing and hearing and digesting food and having a heart that beats and maintaining your body temperature and all of that stuff. that's your body does that, right? I mean, do you manage the trillions and billions and bajillion cellular processes that happen in each and every one of your cells, multiplied by the 70 to 120 trillion cells that you have in your body every second? Do you do that? No. I mean, do you manage your pulse? Do you manage your heart? Do you manage your nervous system? Do you manage your liver, your kidneys? Or, your body is your unconscious mind, and it does a great job of keeping you alive. And of course, it's wired for survival. It's wired to keep you safe. Now, how does that work? Then you say, well, I've got this brain. I make choices. I'm in charge. Well, yes and no. Because the conscious part of the mind, right? The conscious you is the bit that's in the walnut. Most of us, if not all of us, have seen the picture of the brain, and it looks like a walnut from the outside. There's this crinkled piece on the outside, which is called the cerebral cortex, and it's rumpled so that it gets more space because things happen on the surface, surface area. And that's where all the thoughts and the reason and the rationale and your conscience and your will and your memories and your ability to move your body and your senses and all that stuff and a whole lot more is processed. That happens there. And then inside of that you have the emotional brain, which when you get sensory information in from the environment or alternatively from your body, processes that and always creates some kind of chemistry as a result of it. Any thought that registers creates chemistry. And what happens when we learn things is you make connections between neurons, right? You make synaptic connections. And what the research about learning has shown is that you can learn something and in a particular part of the brain that relates to what you've been learning, you will double the number of connections that are there from, I think, that in this particular experiment that was done, and I need to go read the detail of it, but in this particular experiment, the number of connections must have been counted, and it doubled from 1,300 to 2,600. And I don't even remember the period of time, but it might have been just, here is a learning session, and, we've made some neurological connections. But the researchers in this same experiment discovered that if those new connections weren't serviced, if the new information wasn't remembered, if it wasn't used, then those connections would prune apart. Anywhere between hours and days, they'd fall apart and they wouldn't keep being together. So you learn a fact, it's like, oh, that's interesting. It's like, meeting someone and greeting them and say, oh, hello, your name's Susan. Right. G'day, Julian. Hello, Lynn. But if you have no reason to remember Susan's name in the next little while, you just forget it. It's in short-term memory, right? But it doesn't go to long-term memory. So what makes a memory become long-term? Well, it can have a very high emotional charge, in which case the body registers it, and it's either really good and we really want to remember this, and you savor it and you revisit it. Oh, that was such a good holiday. And a month later, you're still thinking about it, and you're firing and wiring those memories into your brain, and they're staying there because you're revisiting them, and you're actually enriching them as you remember them, because you remember more things. And then because of what you remember, you actually start to think, oh yeah, and that was like this and that was like that, and the brain makes more connections between related pieces of information, and it just does that automatically. With a really good memory, that's what happens. With a really bad memory, the same thing happens, except it's all about, well, that was awful and I need to avoid this happening again, so I need to look out for that. And I remember that I did this the last time something similar happened, and the brain makes more connections. It makes a very enriched neural network, and because it's powerful emotion, it remembers it. And there's other research, which I can't remember right now, which shows that we actually remember things better when they're emotionally charged. That's just how it works. So, that's how you make a long-term memory from experience. If you want to make a long-term memory from learning something, You have to repeat and revise and practice the information that you're taking in. There's two kinds of memories. There's episodic memories, that's experience, having an experience in your body and going, oh, I remember that. And then there's semantic memory, which is facts, things you learn. And, you learn a fact like somebody's name because you meet them at a party, and you don't need to remember that long term, so you don't recall it. But if you are studying to be a doctor, well, then you're using that information. And what happens is the information that you're putting into your brain, you're firing and wiring, you're making connections. And there is a process by which that neurological network, which to start off with, like when you're learning to ride a bike, or you're learning to be a doctor, or you're learning to be unhappy, or you're learning to be happy. Okay, it's all the same. It starts off being wooden and uncomfortable, and you wobble and you fall off the bike and you bark your knee and you hit the pedal with your foot. Has anyone done that? I remember that. You do all of those things and you learn from them. Oh, don't do that, do this, whatever. And you practice it and you practice it and you practice it. And you get more and more accomplished at riding a bike, being a doctor, being unhappy, being happy, being disempowered, being a genius, whatever it is you want to be. You get more and more practice at that the more you do it. And there comes a point where instead of being this thing that you have to consciously remember and think, oh yeah, this is how I ride a bike and I do this and I turn that and I look over here and there comes a point where it moves from this conscious part of the brain and it goes into the unconscious part of the brain, which is the cerebellum, which is the reptilian brain, and that is where our habits live. That's where the things live that we do, and our bodies know how to do them better than we do. And I have a really good example for that. I was working in a spreadsheet on Friday, and I'm a keyboard person. I like keyboard shortcuts. They're very fast. I don't have to pick up the mouse. I'm typing and then I do it with my keyboard. And there was a particular command that I was going to do, but there was a thought running through my head, or someone was saying something to me. I can't remember which. There was another input at the same time. And it interrupted the automatic process, and I suddenly could not remember which keystrokes to use to do that command. And I've done it hundreds of times. And it was just really interesting. It was like these two things collided and suddenly, kaboom, I'd forgotten that thing. I will probably have to go and look it up. And it'll be like, oh yeah, that. And, something collided with it and just interrupted the thing from firing. But you don't have to remember how to walk every day. You don't have to remember how to be yourself every day either. You just wake up and you look at your life and you remember who you are. And, I don't. Oh, my God, I'd never turn my cell phone on first thing in the morning, but many people do. And they go and check all their friends and the email. And it's like, oh, okay, I know who I am now. It's automatic. And you get up out of your bed and you do the same things in the same order. Because it's easy and you don't need to think about it, because if you just go through your process, you're going to get dressed and you're going to get into your day and it's all cool. And that's great if those habits, those automatic programs that you don't even know how you do them, and the minute you start to look at them and think, how do I do this? You suddenly can't remember. It's like entering the PIN on your card, or your body knows how to do it, but Or like when you are used to dialing someone's phone number, but somebody says, what is that phone number? And you think, I don't know. Because you fired and wired it into your fingers and your vision, you have a visual kinetic memory of, oh, this is the number. But when you want to retrieve it as something you can say, it's not there. Because you don't normally do that. You just use your fingers and your visual memory, and it's this pattern and you don't think about it. That's the habitual brain. And the habitual brain and the chemical brain, the bit that we don't have conscious control over, they run your body and they run you 95% of the time. I mean, they run your body 100% of the time. And 95% of the time, the thoughts you're thinking, the things you're doing, the places you go, the people you interact with, the way you interact with them, the things you do when you go to those particular familiar places and wear the same clothes and do the same things, and me too, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's just automatic. And if your life, as you like it, as you have it on automatic, isn't what you like, your body is just running it. And you can take yesterday and think, well, tomorrow's not going to be much different. And it's true. And I can look at my life and say, well, I can map it out. And from time to time, I look at my life, my weeks, and think, well, am I actually doing what I want to be doing? And is there any space for something new to come into my life? Because if there isn't, I better go make some. So the habit of being yourself is so unconscious, you don't even know you're doing it. It's just who you are, and it's normal. And it's hardwired. And by hardwired, I mean you just do it, and you don't even realize a lot of the time that you're doing it. And you don't realize that those thoughts that you think all the time about who you are and what you can do are also hardwired. They're just habitual until you try to change. And so the way to change it is first to become aware of it, to realize, oh, you mean this shitty state of being that I've been in for the last 15 years is not who I am. Correct. It's habitual. It feels really like you. It feels really normal. And you can tell all the stories about why you feel that way. But it's not you. It's just a habit. And these habits are so powerful. Because remember, when you think the same familiar thoughts, you have the same familiar chemistry, and your body gets the chemical expression of that familiar self, and it goes, yes, this is normal, this is great, I'm used to this, I know I can survive this. But all the same, that habitual you might be programming your body into disease. Because if that habitual you is stressed or sad or angry or whatever it is, that stressful chemistry and the hormones of stress, long term, push the buttons, the genetic buttons for disease. That's just how it is. So the first thing is to question whether everything you think about yourself is actually true, and whether the way that you are is immutable and can't change. Because it can, and it's not. Okay, it's not true, and it can change. But what I'm finding as I am challenging very fundamental experiences and knowings and truths about who I am is that my body sure as hell doesn't want to go anywhere new. It fights it. So to understand, oh, you mean being miserable is a habit, it's not actually who I am and I can change it? Yeah, okay. And then, as soon as you make the decision to have a different experience and you start, moving in a new direction, all of a sudden in your life, 50 different things can come up that give you the reason to be exactly who you used to being, and carry on being like that. And then you can say, but this happened and that happened. It's just not a good time for me to try to feel differently. It really is a revelation when you start to watch yourself, Linda. You're so right. And to observe and see and perhaps be horrified, but then to think, well, okay, this is who I am. I better have some compassion for me. I'm sure I did it for a good reason, but I just want to do something else. So to recognize who you've been, to make a very conscious thought and choice about who you want to be instead and how that feels. And that can be very challenging if you just don't know how it feels, if you can hardly imagine how it feels. And then you've actually got to do something differently. You've got to make a different choice. And sometimes they're very small choices. Most of the time they're very small choices which add up to very big things, and a small choice can be actually massive. You can think, but I just made this tiny change. But all the stuff that sits behind that tiny change is actually enormous. So a lot of the time we just make incremental changes and say, no, I'm not going to be like that anymore. I don't want to react to that person that way anymore. Oh my God, Linda, I'm so know what you're talking about. And exactly like you see that person doing that thing and you think, oh, gee, I used to be like that. Oh God, I still wince inside when I think of who I used to be. I got to have more compassion for that me, because I was doing the best that I could at the time. And if I can manage that, I'm going to have more compassion for that person that's currently ticking me off, because they're just me and I don't love that me enough to be, more appropriate for them. Not to say that if people shit on you, you should just sit there and take it, but, I hope this makes sense. So, to become aware, to realize there is a choice, to start to very thoughtfully and consciously choose who and how you want to be and what that feels like, and then make small choices, and sometimes very big ones. I made one of those recently, to live and embody that new self. It's not a quick fix. This is no magic wand, because you don't change the habit of a lifetime. Kaboom, it's done. No. If you spend a lifetime being a certain way, it might take you some time to change the connections in your brain, to actually unwire a hardwired program habit in your unconscious mind where it's just doing it for you 95% of the time. It's just so automatic. You have to become aware of those automatic thoughts and behaviours and feelings and decide if you really want to keep being that. And that is going to take time. But if you've been miserable for 45 years and it takes you 2 or 3 years to stop being miserable, I think that's worth it. Speaking from experience, I think it's worth the effort to become a new person. And it doesn't seem to matter what time of life you're in. It's like, well, are you going to say, oh, it's too late now? I might as well just carry on the way I am until I die. What's the point in that? You might as well make the most of what you have. Because you never know, when you change yourself, remember, you change your thoughts, you change your feelings, you are actually going to change your body. You can't not. It's a struggle sometimes because the body says, I don't want to go into the unknown. I don't want to feel love because it comes with a risk of rejection. I don't want to feel safety because it comes with the risk that I'll be unsafe. I don't want to stop being afraid. I don't want to stop being vigilant. Thank you very much. That's how I've survived for the last 53 years. And you want me to relax and open up to love? Are you kidding? The body will do that because the body is in the past. And for me and you, for you and I to have a new experience, we actually have to take our bodies for a walk into the future. And I haven't really talked about that as much as I wanted to, but I've spent the time defining the problem, because if you don't understand what the reason is to make the effort, why would you bother? So, yeah, you're finally leaving your misery behind you. That's so awesome, Linda. And you can say it's taken some work, but it's so worth the effort, right? It is so worth the effort. So, to reprogram the body means reprogramming your mind and understanding your body is going to lag behind, and you have to lead the way and know that it's going to follow you. And if you keep at it, you persist, it will change. You will change. And your life will change. And that's what I wanted to say today. Very much love. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.